In the 17th age the Holland went mad trade tulip bulbs in the expect they could do a large income. But was tulip craze, a proverb of avarice compared to the latter hard invest in the Bitcoin cryptographic currency, very so terrible? How lot is a item cost? An ounce of a kilo of apples? A steak in poem? One easy way of answering machine how issue is to say how he's cost everything its cost may be in a finance marketplace. But occasionally prices go to top and raise, which is named a speculation bladder. The fictitious financier, Gordon Gekko, in the cinema Side Road, Cash Never Sleeps, outlined this big bladder history of all period. Behind in the 1600s the Holland got Assumption Dengi to the spot how you could buy a nice building on the channel in Amsterdam for the cost of one lamp, he told. Later it compressed, he added. Human beings got graded of. But contemporary study suggests we've wronged the tulip trading. It wasn't speculation Dengi but culture factors how done human beings importance the blossom. Following you increase a white's tulip for 9 year or so, abruptly it will be stripy or mottled, says Anne Goldgar, prof of previous modern Europe story at Tsar's School London. The essence of a illness, but human beings were not aware of how at the period thou didn't very aware which was departure to occur in yours tulips, and human beings favorite the reality how they always were change. In the 17th age tulips, initially treated in the Turkish imperial power, were a new arrive in the Netherlands, and their change colors done them a hot food for the aesthetically customized. Rich Holland human beings were acute to show off their top-class flavor. Down there were a lot of human beings who had cash to expend, says Professor Goldgar. This identical human beings who purchased pictorial tended to be the human beings who purchased tulips. Professor Goldgar says how times several flowers saw prices as top as 5,000 guilders, the price of a pleasant building, these were really uncommon. I found just 37 human beings who consumable more than rather than 400 guilders on flowers at any spot at how period. 4 persons 100 guilders might not buy a building, but how was yet more than rather than the annual wages of an inexperienced worker. Tulips saw a large growth in prices at the end of 1636, steady before they plummeted on 6 and February 7, 1637. Professor Goldgar says the collapse was perhaps inflicted by instability and fears of excess. But the impact wasn't almost as bad as the history suggests. I looked to try and discover nobody how was done ruin, since the is the mythology of year how human beings were drowning themselves in canals since they were done ruin, she says. In fact I couldn't discover nobody how was ruined since of tulip craze. No one recessed themselves in the canals. But how doesn't indicate the rupture of the tulip bladder didn't reason several issues. Bulbs remain in the land for nearly the whole year, and so the just period you can exchanging the bulbs is among deceased May and August while you can dig them upwards, says Professor Goldgar. This issue was how the otherwise of the period human beings were purchase bulbs how they didn't get before June, and they didn't pay for them before later each. So down there were a lot of human beings for the time of the collapse who purchased them but never pay for them. But common, Professor Goldgar says, the Holland economics was not struck. So why is the speculation history so named? Tulip craze was popularized by an expense spelled by the 19th century Scotch author Charles Mackay, who favored a succulent history. Same's not undertaken severely as a historiographer, but his bright tales include trapped on. Sarcastically, Mackay oneself was trapped up in a ivory-fighty finance craze, the UK rail bladder of the 1840s, that several scholars consider as the largest technique bladder in story, accompanied by one of the largest finance crashes. How, certainly, is a class for us all, he's really lightweight to ridicule at history bubbles, and though to overstate the folly of such trapped up in them. But it is not so lightweight to aware how to respond while one may, or may not, be implicated in a